This is Matthew Cipriano. I am the Manager of Enrollment and Education Operations here at Weill Cornell Graduate School of Medical Sciences. This is Matthew Cipriano. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And Education Operations. Sorry, I'm getting a little feedback here. Give me 1 second. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to get some echo here. Sorry, bear with me. I'm getting a little feedback here. Give me 1 second. That should solve that problem. We were just getting started here. We've got everyone live now, so we will continue from there. I'm going to welcome all of our viewers. We've got 12 people watching right now. Thank you to all of our applicants who've been accepted. We've got a great panel here today. Unfortunately, Natalia Gertzek is unable to join us. I'm going to introduce our panel. They'll all have a chance to say hi, tell you about the program they were in, who their PI was, and what their research topic and thesis was as students here. So we'll begin with Sarah Kishinevsky from the class of 2016. Sarah is the director of the Dean's Entrepreneurship Lab here at Weill Cornell. Say a few words.
Hi everyone, and congratulations. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Sarah Kishinevsky, and I'm the director of the Dean's Entrepreneurship Lab. My program was the Neuroscience PhD program, and my PI was Lorenz Studer, who's at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And what he does is induced pluripotent stem cell derived neurons. So my project was deriving midbrain dopamine neurons from induced pluripotent stem cells and modeling them for Parkinson's disease.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Next up, we have Rebecca Jones. Rebecca Jones is an assistant professor of neuroscience in the Department of Psychiatry here at Weill Cornell Medicine.
Hi, and again, a big congratulations to all of you. It is an exciting place that you're in, trying to figure out your next steps. So I am still at Cornell, so obviously I have loved it enough that I'm still here. And I graduated about 5 years ago in the neuroscience program. My PI was BJ Casey, and my research was focused on human brain development and specifically looking at how adolescents learn from interactions with their peers compared to children and adults. And I was located at Weill Cornell, and I am now in kind of basically a very similar department to where I was, and yeah, so that's the summary.
Great, thank you very much, Rebecca. Next up, we have JB McBean. Is from the class of 2014. He's at the BGB group and is an associate medical director there. Jamie?
Hey everyone. Sorry I was late, but congratulations and welcome to the club. So my name is Jamie McBean. I graduated in 2014 from the lab of Dr. Weill, and the work that I did was focused on protein methyltransferases and investigating their role in both normal diseases and cancer cells, and looking at the difference between those and figuring out a way to kind of profile the substrates for those different enzymes. And yeah, a lot of that work is still ongoing in the lab, and I think it's led to some pretty cool ongoing research translationally. So that's me. Good to see you all, and looking forward to getting some good questions from you.
Sorry about that, I was on mute. Thank you very much, Jamie. Finally, we've got Illya Bomash from the class of 2013. Illya is a managing data scientist at Knewton.
Hey everyone, nice to talk to you, and congratulations from me as well. I remember being in your shoes many years ago. So I graduated from the Tri-Institutional Computational Biology program in 2013. That's a joint program with Cornell and Ithaca and Memorial Sloan Kettering. I worked in a computational and experimental neuroscience lab. So I was in Sheila Nirenberg's lab. The lab works on the early visual system. So I worked on studying populations of different kinds of neurons in the retina, doing experiments with mice and doing a lot of modeling work to try to figure out how those different populations of cells work together to put together the sorts of information about visual scenes that we process. And the second half of my PhD was actually applying some of those models to a computer vision model, which was fun to do.
Great, thank you, Illya. I just need to remember to keep unmuting myself so when I start speaking, you guys can actually hear me. Next up, we're just going to go through some questions we have for all of our panelists. First, we're going to start with, what do you do now for a living? If you could talk a little bit about that, as well as how Weill Cornell helped prepare you and influence your decision on where you ended up. Sarah, if you'd like to get started.
Sure. So right now, I actually, same as Rebecca, I love Cornell enough that I'm actually still here. And my current title is the Director of the Dean's Entrepreneurship Lab. And what that means is basically, if you have a really cool idea, biomedical idea, that maybe you developed in your lab or one of your friends did and you'd like to explore it and turn it into a startup, that's what we're here for. So and Cornell directly influenced my career because I actually got this sort of initiative started during grad school, which I think one of the later questions asks about extracurricular activities, so I can get into that later. But because of the collaborative and open nature here, not just the tri-institutional and just the freedom that you get to explore, and I was able to actually develop this passion of helping people translate their ideas into commercial products into a job. So this is basically my dream job and I love it, and I've been doing it for the last year. So very excited about it and happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Rebecca, would you like to follow up on that?
Sure. So I am currently PI of my own lab. And my lab is part of the psychiatry department here at Weill Cornell. And it's kind of my dream job. It is my dream job. So I went to graduate school hoping that I could pursue a career in academia. And so I am super pumped to, be able to kind of go through these steps and be doing what I'm doing. So I think that graduate school, kind of obviously prepared me to be where I am today. And I think that uniquely at Cornell, the professors and mentorship that I received has been so instrumental to helping me set up my own lab. So the rotations that I had are all mentors that are kind of integral to my experience now, and they have been so helpful in kind of navigating early career steps. And so those connections I made in graduate school were so important for me. And even when I was in graduate school, I kind of started to see that, you could work in all these different labs that maybe weren't necessarily going to be your thesis lab, but through the rotations, I gained all these skills that I'm applying now as a PI where, you're not just doing one research project, right? You have a lot of different kind of experiments going on, and I feel like I was really able to create an understanding of that through those kind of first early years at Cornell. So, yeah.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. Jamie, would you like to follow up?
I would love to. I am currently working for a company called BGB Group, and we are in the medical communications space. So what that means is that we're taking, high scientific concepts, distilling them down to, easy to digest information, and presenting materials that are appropriate for different audiences of varying pursuits and scientific levels of expertise. So my particular company, we work with different pharmaceutical companies, and we develop materials both for their internal teams, whether it's the scientific people on those teams, the commercial people on those teams, or what have you, to kind of educate them about different diseases that they're choosing to focus on. And then in addition, we work with these companies to develop external facing materials for doctors, for nurses, for patients, what have you, to really, again, present some of that really important scientific knowledge that they want to put forward. And in addition to developing those materials from a scientific standpoint, we really help them in more of an advisory or consulting role, where we help them really analyze different disease landscapes, for example, or look at the ways that science is being talked about in one sphere and figure out the best and easiest and most effective way to talk about that in another area. Of really looking at a lot of the hardcore science that's out there and staying on top of that, but also using that science to, think big picture about, general healthcare within the US and worldwide. Being at Cornell, obviously the academics are, second to none at Cornell. And I think not only having, really great professors and people that are willing to really instill all of that science in your brain, and also having people from a lot of different pursuits in a very short radius was really helpful in, giving me the exposure I needed to learn the science that was necessary for my thesis, but also give me a forum where I could learn to be versatile with the types of science that I was learning. And that's something that you're going to really need to take with you wherever you go, whether you're in an academia or in a non-academic environment. And I think in addition, Cornell, even when I was there and in the years since I've left, has made great strides in presenting both academic and non-academic options for students. And I think just, with the way things are now and, just the availability of different types of jobs and science in general, I think Cornell has done a really good job of presenting a multitude of options and bringing in a lot of speakers from, whether it's academia or alums or non-alums or just people generally looking to talk about science, to really give students a breadth of options and give them a pretty big perspective on what's happening in science today. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Illya, you're the last panelist for this question, but please illuminate us.
I'll do my best. So ever since defending my PhD, I've been at Knewton, which is an education technology company here in New York City. We work on adaptive learning technologies. So we work on understanding how students learn in different academic areas, and learning about individual students so that we can support them with the appropriate materials and the instructional and assessment content to help them achieve their learning goals. So I've been at Knewton for 4 years. I've been here as a data scientist and now as a managing data scientist. Cornell was a great preparation for both of those roles. In terms of data science, it's definitely something that comes up as a sort of hot job title in the last few years. And I've been able to work with a lot of different kinds of data scientists while here and get to see what data science means in practice in New York City, which has been interesting. I think so the data science community at Knewton, not everybody is a former PhD or master's student, but most people are. There are actually a lot of former neuroscientists that have ended up at Knewton for some reason. Yeah, I think Cornell in particular was a good preparation in a couple of big ways for this kind of work. One is really just sort of the stuff that you pick up from experience, sort of in the background in pursuing your thesis topics. It's your ability to pose a hypothesis and study it scientifically using whatever options you can. These are questions that may or may not have an answer. You may be asking. You may find out that you're asking the wrong question. They may be questions that there's no clear way to get an answer. You come up with experiments that you hope will take you in that direction. Those experiments inevitably give you, somewhat ambiguous, somewhat unclear evidence, and you just have to continuously work through what does the information that I have so far tell me? How certain can I be of different parts of that? What are the next hypotheses that it suggests? And what are the next experiments that I can set up to try to answer those questions? And doing that both both as an individual, as a PhD student or a data scientist working on your own project, but also doing it collaboratively, doing it in the context of a lab, learning how to share the information that you've gotten so far and hold those discussions with your colleagues. I'd say that's the biggest thing that I find extremely valuable, both in my work and the other data scientists that I've seen in New York City. It's definitely something that that a PhD optimizes for giving you that sort of experience in a way that's hard to achieve somewhere else. Your goal as a grad student is to learn how to do this process productively, which is a very cool and useful thing. The other aspect for me was the technical skills. So I was in a computational lab that had some major theoretical components. So probability theory, statistics, information theory have been very useful for me, and programming have been very useful for me after grad school. What exactly those skills are depends a lot on the lab that you do your degree in, but that's an added bonus.
Great, thanks so much, Illya. So I'd also like to bring up that Illya, Jamie, and Sarah have all participated in our alumni career talks here at Weill Cornell. Our alumni office invites back alumni to talk about their careers and the career pathways that they've taken to have the careers that they are currently in. We invite back alumni about once a month to come and talk to our students and have our students ask them questions about the direction they went and really how they got there and what skills they needed to develop. It's great that we've had 3 of our panelists come back and participate in that. Next up, our question is, learned at Weill Cornell that you still find valuable today? Why don't we switch up the order a little bit? Why don't we start with Jamie?
All right. So one thing I learned at Weill Cornell that I still use today, it's the power of collaboration. I think Illya touched on it when he was talking about his lab experience and, sharing work, sharing ideas, sharing everything you can. I think that is something that I picked up on a lot, not only in my lab experience, but in some of the other activities I was involved in at Cornell. So I was part of the Graduate Student Executive Council at Cornell, and some of that job is, running student events and, some of the things that go along with being a student government. But I think a big part of it was learning to work with a lot of the people around you in addition to the people that are in your lab. So the people in the graduate school office, different professors, the people externally, just learning to collaborate as best as you can and making sure that you are getting the most out of you and the most out of the people that you're with. And I think just the way that things are structured at Weill Cornell, classes, the way that you can rotate through labs and work with all types of different people and learn, about, fostering those relationships from the very beginning. I think that is something that I still take with me in the work that I do now and all of the other extracurricular things that I do. Just being able to, figure out the best way to work with someone, figuring out what you can offer, what you need to ask for help with, and just ways to make sure that everyone is working together, is on the same page, and is able to get things done well. So I think Cornell did a really good job of instilling those sorts of values in me.
Great, thank you. Illya, you're up next.
So I guess I'll riff off of what Jamie was talking about. One of the things that, one of the components you need for good collaboration is good communication. And that's something that you need to make the time to focus on as part of your PhD work. Different programs, different PIs encourage it to varying degrees. But that's something that I've come to see the value of more and more as I went through grad school and afterwards. So I was in the Tri-Institutional Computational Biology program, which spans a few different institutions, a lot of different research applications, with the commonality being that people are generally computational and quantitative and run simulations and things like that. My lab was in the Physiology and Biophysics department at Cornell, where the commonality was physiology and biophysics, and computational approaches were relatively in the minority. And so both of those were opportunities for me to present on my work. Both the Tri-I program and the department had lots of events where students would talk about their work. And those were very valuable. I had to focus on very different ways of explaining my work, different things that I wanted to focus my talks on, depending on which audience I was talking to. And that sort of awareness of my audience, thinking about how to present my work to different kinds of stakeholders, people who think about things in different ways, was very valuable and is valuable to this day.
Great, thank you, Illya. Rebecca, why don't you go next?
Sure. So I'd say that for me, probably the biggest kind of theoretical piece that I learned during school was kind of the emphasis and importance on the clinical implications of your work. And so I remember when I started grad school, I didn't know what it would mean to be so enmeshed in a medical school and be so kind of close in proximity also to Memorial Sloan Kettering and also to Rockefeller. And I think that as I started going through school, it became so clear that we were always thinking about our research questions and what we were learning in terms of helping individuals with different diseases, different disorders. And that's been instrumental for me because, I mean, my research now is largely in autism. And I think that my training at Cornell to think about kind of different disease states and clinical implications was so important. And the second piece I'd say is that given that you're kind of situated among these different institutions and really within the medical school is the importance of translational research. And as somebody who does human work, it really was unique that at Cornell I could rotate in a lab that uses mice, and they allowed me to, I was always going to be somebody who was interested in humans, but I did a rotation in a mouse lab and continued to kind of pursue understanding kind of more on the animal and the molecular side, because obviously that's a real emphasis at Cornell. And that's just been so valuable to me today because I now go to those talks and I understand them. But it's also kind of where medicine is going, where really everything is thinking from a translational perspective. And so that I'd say that those two pieces were so important.
That's awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. Sarah?
Well, I think these guys summed it up pretty well. So I guess I'll kind of add to what you guys were saying. So I think for me, it definitely was both the critical thinking piece and the communication and collaboration piece. So, why do you think that a certain experiment should be done? How are you, and how are you asking your questions? Is that the right way to ask the question? What kind of answers are you going to get from that? And why do you assume that these things? And when it comes, and I think actually the ways that I was challenged was not just within my lab, because each lab has a specific field. So as you can see from all of us, I was in the stem cell field, Rebecca was in humans, Jamie was doing enzymes, Illya was doing computational stuff. But now if I explain why I need to do a certain experiment to someone else, they might say, well, why don't you try it in mice or humans, or why don't you look at this enzyme? So I've actually, a lot of my project was collaborative. I did mass spectrometry, I did EM, and I did a lot of different, so I had to collaborate with a lot of different labs. So they would make certain assumptions about what I should be doing, what kind of experiments were important for me to do. And so part of it was I had to decide what is actually important for me to do these experiments in my field, and what's important in this field. So if I'm writing a paper or I'm communicating that, it's very important. And I think that's important in life as well, to really, just not just deeply think about your field, but think about how that is seen in other fields, and what the kind of bigger picture is, and why you're doing these experiments. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, Sarah. We are starting to get some questions from our viewers. The first question we're going to address is, how was Weill Cornell involved in guiding you in choosing the right career path for you? Would you like to start with that one?
Sure. So I'd say that there's so many different kind of people and administrative frameworks that are there to help you. So at the most basic level, your PI and kind of the other mentors that are on your thesis committee are certainly involved. And then through the Graduate Student Executive Council, got to forge relationships with deans and administrators, and they were always willing to meet with me to talk about different career paths and kind of what led them to be where they are today. And they have all different types of experiences. And then there's kind of the more structured types of advising that has kind of been alluded to, where there's talks and panelists, and there's an alumni network. So there's kind of a lot of different avenues that you can go to seek out advice. And I think that the idea is that everyone is supporting you, and I never felt pressure at any of those levels to pick a career in academia or not pick a career in academia. All of those different people with all those different backgrounds all just wanted me to do what was best for me, and I really felt that support throughout graduate school. And I think that in some ways that's unique to Cornell, and that they're not trying to push you to do one thing over another, but really to support you in kind of what is going to be the best thing for your career.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Jamie, would you like to follow up on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think to what Rebecca was discussing, I think the support system at Cornell was great for me. When I came into Cornell originally, I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I wasn't completely sure of the path to take to get there, and if it would end up being the best thing for me after leaving Cornell. So I think just being able to go to not only your immediate thesis advisor and asking them about their opinion, but also going to the people on your thesis committee, asking them, going to the people in the grad school office who are, more closely associated with career pathways, for example, and getting their opinion, and getting the ability to not only talk with them, but have them connect you with, other alumni that have gone along the same path, was really, really valuable for me. And I think what ended up giving me the most insight into the field that I'm in now was similar to how we're helping out everyone there now, having alumni come in and and talk about their experiences and talk about the different types of work that they do and the different pursuits that you can take. And I think that, you know, having that connection and having the ability to bring in these people and talk about their experience, and, you know, having the grad school willing to follow up on your behalf and get more information was something that I found very helpful, and I think really informed how I ended up where I am now.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Illya, would you like to comment on this?
Sure. I'll second everything that's been said so far. I think the people at Weill Cornell were my main resource. I'll add one other thing, which is New York City as a whole. New York City has a vibrant community of many different kinds of vibrant communities. For me in particular, as I started hearing people talk about different roles in data science and the sorts of things that people were working on, and some friends going into data science in different places, it was very abstract, and for me it was hard to compare it with doing a postdoc and pursuing the career track that I saw in front of me. And one of the things that was very useful for me was starting to, as I was starting to wrap up my thesis, starting to go to meetups and things like that that had to do with data science or machine learning and things like that around New York City, and hear about what sorts of problems different people in New York City were working on, what it meant to be a data scientist, and things like that. So the people at Cornell were directly very helpful, but also being in New York City was very helpful for those reasons.
Great, thank you, Illya. Sarah, do you have anything to add to this?
I think these guys covered it pretty well, but I second them. So basically, Weill Cornell at all levels was extremely supportive, both my PI and my committee and administratively. And as you guys can see from here, I mean, we're just alumni giving our time because we want you guys to come and we want you guys to have the same experience that we did. So there's a lot of positive energy at our school, and that actually also drew me when I saw that during recruitment. And also, to build on what Illya said, being in New York City for me was a big draw as well. And, you know, I'm in the entrepreneurship space, and right now is a very exciting time to be in New York City because historically Boston and San Francisco have been kind of known to be the biotech startup spaces, but right now investors and things are really starting to focus in New York City because there's a lot of talent here. And so it's really exciting to see all of the, you know, biotech startup energy come here. We have the Alexandria Center, we have a number of incubators and some really interesting success stories recently. And it's cool to just be in New York City and be able to see all of that. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And to follow up on what you were saying as well, along with all the biotech startups, there are over 8 major graduate programs in biomedical science in New York City from a number of well-respected institutions. I think Illya touched on that a little bit in talking about the meetups and getting the opportunity to really talk to and meet some of your fellow students who are working in the biomedical sciences around the New York City area. We did have one question about internships. It was, did any of you do internships or externships during your grad school? If so, how easy was it to arrange? And was Weill Cornell and your PI supportive? I'm actually going to take this question myself. So internships were not done by any of our panelists, actually. And up until recently, we did not have an internship program of any sort here. In the last 2 years, we've developed that out and have streamlined the process for applying to internships, working with your PI and arranging them so that you can have a smooth internship experience without it being very disruptive to your lab experience as well. So while none of our panelists were able to participate in the internship process or go through an internship while they were here, we do now have in place the structure and support we need for an internship program. There is on our website a page devoted to the internships, and you can learn a little more about that. Or excuse me, we're working on developing that page, and we will get that out to you once it's up and running. The next question we have, and I think this couples nicely with one of our questions from our viewers, is what did you do for extracurricular activities while you were at Weill Cornell? And then one of our viewers asks, what are the biggest challenges of being a graduate student in a high cost of living area like New York City? Illya, would you like to start with this one?
Sure. So I spent a lot of time in the New York area. So my family was nearby and a number of my friends were nearby. Honestly, I didn't participate as a contributor to many of the extracurricular activities that we had here outside of my department, aside from attending events like Beers of the World and things like that. Yeah, most of my extracurriculars were visiting museums and things like that in New York City. New York City is a high cost of living area. That's definitely true. Speaking from a program that had students that joined labs in some in Ithaca and some in New York City, there was a higher stipend that was given to students who were in New York City to offset the cost of living in part. As now an out of graduate school adult in New York City, I know that one of the biggest chunks is housing, and that's a place where Cornell and all of the other institutions support their students quite a bit, help out with housing costs. And the other thing I'll say is, food, everybody develops their own strategies. There's always free pizza somewhere. And other things, there's a cost to living in New York City, but there's also, one of the things that you're paying for is opportunity. It's nice to, I guess I'd say it's more expensive to visit New York City than to live here. So for instance, I decided that it was important for me to be a member of the Museum of Modern Art. I'm a huge modern art fan, and visiting once means you have to stand in line for a really long time and pay a lot of money to get in. If you know you're going to go a lot, you get a membership, and it ends up being a lot cheaper for the experience overall. So there are tricks like that.
Great, thank you. Sarah, would you like to follow up on this?
Oh, there we go. So two-part question, right? Extracurricular activities and cost of living. So for me, the extracurricular activity that I did, which actually led to my job, I started a student club, which became pretty successful. It's called the Bench to Bedside Initiative, and now it's run as a 12-week life sciences entrepreneurship crash course. But it started out with about 10 dorks like me sitting in the pharmacology conference room talking about startups and not knowing anything about them and realizing, wow, there are so many patents here. So this is where the tri-institutional community really comes in strong. There are so many patents at the licensing office that are developed in Cornell, MSK, Rockefeller, and a lot of them actually don't necessarily get commercialized. So what we did was that we said, you know what? Why don't we build a practice business plan around this patent and say, let's pretend it's actually a product. How would we take it to market? This became a club, and we brought in speakers to teach us, and it eventually got flushed out into a class and ended up actually generating several startups. And so a couple of students who've graduated are now full-time at those startups. So that's very exciting. And so that was directly an extracurricular activity that I did. I didn't at first, think that it was going to lead to a job, but it became very successful. This graduate school made it into a class, so you can take it for credit. And supported it 100%. So we got budget to get food, to take our speakers out to dinner, and now about 100, 150 people attend each session. This last year we had 19 teams, pitched to 8 venture capitalists, and I think 2 of those teams are probably going to become real startups once they graduate, which is pretty soon. So that's really cool. In terms of cost of living, yes, New York is an expensive place to live, but to build on what Illya said, it is. I do find it more expensive to to visit than to live. First of all, the housing. So when people would visit, I also was in New York City before coming to the grad school, and when I had friends from New York City that weren't in grad school visit my studio, they're like, "Whoa, how did you afford that?" And the dirty little secret was I was paying half of what they thought I was actually paying for the housing. And not only that, I was on the 17th floor with a balcony, great view studio. And during Hurricane Sandy, I wouldn't have even known that there was a hurricane. So I absolutely loved my housing. I was very proud of it. Threw a couple parties, I loved it. So that's one thing that really helped is the housing here is definitely subsidized and it's good quality. The other thing is that while there are things like, again, if you're visiting and you have 2 days to see a Broadway show, yeah, you might pay $150, but there are so many ways that you can get things for free. One of them is actually the graduate school will have a lot of free tickets or discount things from movie tickets to Broadway shows. And another thing is just there's so many events. People are advertising things in Central Park all summer long. Basically every day there's free concerts. So if you're kind of become a little bit savvy and you know what's free, you don't really have to pay for much. So yeah, I think it's very doable, and I enjoyed my time very much. So.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Rebecca?
Sure. So I was involved with the Graduate Student Executive Council for a couple of years, which was a lot of fun, organizing various social events, outreach events, and it was a really great way to kind of just meet a lot of different people, both within the graduate school, the medical school, as well as in the administration. So that was my primary extracurricular activity. And then in terms of living in New York City, for me, as everyone said, there's all these kind of ways to get around the cost. And I think that living in New York is such a pro in terms of while you're in graduate school. So you need an outlet for when you're not in the lab and you want to blow off some steam, and you have anything you want at your fingertips in terms of shows or concerts and restaurants. And I thought that was so needed, and you really you need some downtime. And New York City is probably the best place to be in that capacity.
Thanks. Jamie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I can add a couple things quickly. So for the extracurriculars, I, like Rebecca, was also involved in GSEC for a few years. So echo everything that she had to say about GSEC. It was a great experience. And something else that I also did was I played a number of sports while I was at Cornell. So I was on the Cornell softball team, Go Isotopes. I hope they are still playing. If so, you guys should all join. So in addition to that, I also was in a volleyball league that played once a week on either Tuesday or Wednesday nights. And I think to Rebecca's point, having a way to blow off some steam and, get out of the lab for even an hour during the week, I think is so valuable. And it's really going to contribute to your happiness and your ability to work effectively while you're at Cornell. I think it's good to get that separation and give yourself a little bit of perspective so that when you do end up going back into your classes or into your lab, you'll be able to be effective. In terms of the cost of living, echo everything that everyone has said. I will add one thing to that, or two things actually. One, while New York is an expensive place, I think the nice thing about New York is that it is self-aware in that respect. So, for every expensive dinner that's out there, you can find 5 hole-in-the-wall places that will give you just as delicious food for half or a third of the price. You just have to, be willing to go and seek that out a little bit. And that applies to not just food, but pretty much everything else you can think of in New York. And secondly, make friends, because splitting things is a lot easier than paying for everything yourself. So if you do that and you do that early, then you will also save a lot of money in New York.
Great, thanks, Jamie. I'd also like to point out that while Cornell offers the second highest stipend in the city, and I believe actually in the country, we are tied for the second highest stipend with Sloan Kettering, and I believe Rockefeller is only a couple $100s higher. The housing costs for Weill Cornell are on par with most of these schools in the city. And compared to places like UCSF, we actually do offer housing. Our question is going to be about teaching and outreach. This is for Jamie, Rebecca, and Sarah, as Illya didn't really do that. What were your teaching outreach experiences like, and did you work with students on those? Rebecca, would you like to start?
Yes, so I was a TA for a course called Neuron to Brain, and I did that during my my fourth year, my third or fourth year. It's a long time, so I don't quite remember, but it was a really great experience to kind of have that opportunity to work one-on-one with students and to attend all of the lectures again. And it also was tremendously helpful kind of to where I am now, because I do some teaching, and it really prepared me for that. In terms of outreach, I was a volunteer in an elementary school where we would talk about science and science projects, and helped fifth graders create a small experiment, so teaching them about hypotheses and methods and results, and then how to kind of summarize that. And that was at a local school just a couple blocks away from here.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Jamie, would you like to follow up with your experience as a TA?
Yeah, definitely. So I was a TA for a class called Logic and Experimental Design at Cornell, class that deals with some of the things to consider when you're designing experiments, goes through the different techniques that you'll use for the different experiments that you'll run. And that was during, I believe, my third year at Cornell. And I thought it was really valuable. Up until then, you're going through classes, you're learning all of these things, but you don't realize how much you've absorbed until you have to explain your knowledge to somebody else. So I think if you choose to come here and want to get involved in that, I really recommend it. And I think it's a good way to start figuring out the best ways to communicate science to different members of your community. And that's something that I didn't really have much exposure to until coming to Cornell and getting that opportunity. But I think it's really valuable. And I think it's great that Cornell offers the different opportunities like that for students as they're going through their career. And the fact that you can do it, I think, at any point throughout your career up until your fourth year, I want to say, means that there is some flexibility, so you'll really be able to get the most out of it when you have the availability to do so.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Being a TA is also a great way to have a few extra dollars in spending money to add to your wallet and your bank account. Sarah, would you like to follow up with your unique experience being a TA for med students, and then also with the Bench to Bedside initiative course?
Sure. Another course that I was a TA for was one of the courses that's required for the medical students. It was a Neuroscience journal club. So they read papers, and then you're the TA that kind of goes over the papers with them. So that was a lot of fun, and it was also really interesting to not just be in the teaching spot, but think about how medical students looked at papers, it's kind of different from PhDs. So that was really interesting. And I was paid for that. And I was also paid for when Bench to Bedside became a course, I was paid for that as well. And while I didn't pretend to know that I knew how to start a startup, that I knew more than a CEO. But what I did do was, and I still do now with the course, is every speaker that we have, and we have about like 50 guest mentors, lecturers, I'll actually go through all of their slides and make sure that what they're presenting makes sense. So while I'm not creating all the content, I'll guide them in what that should be done. I also created the assignments and graded them. And so that was really interesting, and yeah, got some extra spending money for that. And then in terms of volunteering, I also did a little bit of volunteering. Every year here, there's this program called Brain Awareness Week, where you can go into elementary schools and do like fun things with them to show them and to get them excited about the brain. So one of the exhibits that I was at actually was having them close their eyes and taste different jelly beans, and then open them, and then see if they can figure out the flavor, kind of, showing how your brain plays tricks on you. That was a lot of fun, and that was also very close to here. And then there's also, in our grants office, Zhao Ai, she not only helps you write graduate student grants, but she also organizes a lot of extracurricular volunteering opportunities, and some of them are like summer-long programs where you can teach, I think, once a week or every day or something like that, or there's also kind of one-off things where you come into a school and for a couple of days and you do a small project. And so I did the latter, and that was also a lot of fun.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Sorry, thank you, Sarah. The next question is for Rebecca. Just a heads up, Illya may chime off for a minute. His computer is running out of battery, but if he does, he will join right back with us shortly. As I said, the next question is for Rebecca. As somebody in academia, what mechanisms are in place at Weill Cornell to help you start your career after graduating? I know you participated in the postdoc program here and did a postdoc in a different lab than you actually worked in. And you could speak a bit about our postdoc program and the support structures we have in place there as well.
Yep. So during the end of graduate school, my thesis committee, I think, was pretty instrumental in helping me think about PIs that would be good next steps to reach out to for postdocs. And so I kind of started doing that in my 5th year, and it just turned out that the PI that I really wanted to work with was actually coming to Cornell. So it was a nice coincidence. And I wrote a grant for a postdoctoral grant during that last year of graduate school. So my Cornell PI, my graduate school PI was very supportive of that and helpful in that process, and also with communicating with the new postdoc PI to kind of facilitate that grant writing process. And that was all kind of overseen also by my thesis committee. And then as a postdoc here, there are a lot of kind of career seminars and kind of basically an infrastructure to help you with basically grant writing and early career decisions, papers, how to run a lab, things to be thinking about. So there's a lot of infrastructure that's in place to kind of help support you to that next step. And, a lot of that next step is grant writing. And I think that Cornell does a really wonderful job. They have a lot of kind of different options. There's a grant writing service where they'll proofread your grant for you as an early career investigator. They have workshops on writing K awards. So those are all pieces that are kind of instrumental in helping. And so I'd say that that's probably the biggest pieces.
Great. Thanks so much, Rebecca. And did any of you take advantage of our PhD MBA program? By the looks I'm getting, I'm going to say no, they didn't. But Chris, if you are interested in learning more, please just drop me an email and I can put you in touch with some of our students who have. If there are no more questions from our viewers, I'm just going to give this a few seconds to see if any more pop up. Okay, I'd like to ask each of the panelists to just kind of give an idea of what drew you, what was the highlight of Weill Cornell that made you decide to come here? Any last advice you would have for an applicant who is still considering, and any final words you have? Illya, why don't we start with you in case you pop off shortly?
Sounds good. There were a few things that drew me to Weill. One was the caliber of the faculty here. I was very impressed by the range of options that were available in terms of labs to join and the kinds of research that were going on here. One thing was definitely the location, not just the presence in New York City, but also the tri-institutional area, having Rockefeller and Memorial Sloan Kettering so nearby was very cool. And I did a rotation at Sloan Kettering as well. And I also really liked the people, the students that I interviewed with, and also the administrative staff that I dealt with while I was at Cornell. So those were the things that made me choose it. All of those things were also highlights of my experience here. I'm not sure I have any particularly wise closing words. I had a great time at Weill Cornell and thought it really helped me in a lot of ways. It was a foundational experience of my life. Yeah, just best of luck making your decisions now.
Great, thanks so much, Illya. Rebecca, would you like to go next?
So I'd say what was so clear to me when I interviewed and then just kind of increasingly grew as I spent time at Cornell is the collegial atmosphere that's here. It is a faculty and a student body and an administration that are kind to each other and like each other. And I didn't always see that everywhere when I was interviewing. And I remember just kind of really being struck by that. And I feel that to this day. I like my colleagues. I enjoy working with them. People are happy here. They enjoy the work that they're doing. And I think that that's something that really stands out about Cornell for me.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Jamie, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think adding to Rebecca's point, the thing, along with the location, New York City's amazing, and the different faculty and the research that is done at Cornell, again, as I've mentioned, it's amazing. The fact that everyone I talked to just seemed so genuinely happy and enjoying the time that they were having at Cornell. I visited a number of different universities, and you saw different mindsets and different approaches and just different levels of satisfaction with the work that was being done and the people that they were working with. But coming to Cornell, everyone on my recruitment trip and as I started and continued throughout, just seemed genuinely happy and genuinely satisfied and glad about the experience that they had and about the people that they worked with. And, it may sound kind of, cliche, but that is one of the most important things to keep in mind as you're going through enjoying the people around you, enjoying the work that you do, and making sure that everyone is, enjoying themselves. And if I could offer one piece of advice, it's enjoy this particular time as well. Going all over the country or going to multiple places or even just going to one and seeing the campus and being in that part of your life where you're making pretty influential decisions with like-minded people around you is fun. And if you end up seeing these people next summer or next fall in New York City at Cornell, you've already made a connection. You've already made a friendship that will last for a while. So live that up and enjoy it.
Great, thanks, Jamie. And last but not least, Sarah.
Yeah, so I'll build on these guys. And actually, to Jamie's last point, I made my first friend at Weill Cornell during recruitment, and it was Natalia, who unfortunately couldn't make it today, but we met actually at recruitment at a different school, and then we met again at recruitment at Cornell, and we both got into the other school, and we both decided to come here. And, I would say probably what drew both of us, but I'll talk about myself. Obviously, New York City, wonderful place to be. The tri-institution, being surrounded by all this talent, both the science and all the hospitals around here is really unique. And the location, here on the Upper East Side, it's extremely convenient because you're not too far north, you're not too far south. It's just very easy to get around, and also really the apartment. I love the housing, and most importantly, I did go to a number of universities, and I got into a couple, and one thing that really stuck out to me here is how happy people are and how collaborative, and what Rebecca was saying, kind to each other, which is not always a given in other universities. And so that kind of goes, I would say, in hand with what my advice to you guys would be, is really think about, you're making a decision that's probably going to be at least the next 5 or more years of your life. And this is a really great time. But for me, it was somewhere that I thought I would also be happy. And so that's why I chose to come here, and I hope you will too.
I think those are all great pieces of advice from our panelists. And I think you guys as students who are accepted into multiple programs have a real decision to make now. Thank you to all of our panelists for participating today. This was a great and informative way of speaking to our applicants and giving them a sense of what our alumni are doing now. To our applicants, thank you all who attended and viewed and stayed with us for our full hour. And good luck to you all with the next 37 days and making your final decision on where you will attend school. Thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. You should all have my email address. Or if you'd like, you can review this broadcast. It will be live on the Facebook page, or excuse me, it will be posted on the Facebook page immediately after we wrap up. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.